Is the Dominican Republic really dangerous? Is it safe to visit? In this video, I'm going to share with you statistics, debunk myths, and talk to you about life on the island. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Jonah, and today I'm going to talk about if the Dominican Republic is really as dangerous as the media and others portray it to be, debunking some of these fear-mongering comments, and explaining to you what to expect if you plan on visiting or moving to the Dominican Republic. Let's first look at the statistics and data so that we don't have a non-biased perspective, and let's let the data do the talking. Now, before I get started, I always like to talk about where I get my information from and my sources, because I believe it's extremely important to name your sources rather than it being an opinion. My source is a global organized crime index, which is one of the most comprehensive reports that measures criminality and resilience for each country, measuring on a scale of 1 to 10. The lower the score, the better the country. Countries' criminality scores are made up of a multitude of things, including human trafficking, human smuggling, arms trafficking, illicit counterfeit goods, cocaine, heroin, marijuana trade, just to name a few. Now, before getting into the information about the Dominican Republic, I want to talk about the 3 countries that Dominicans here in Dominican Republic migrate to for a better quality of life, but what most people think about, safety. So the top 3 countries that Dominicans migrate to are the United States, Spain, and Italy. But before I tell you those scores, I want to tell you what the global index score is, so that we have a measurement of what we're going by. So the global score is 5.03. So that is going to go over, like I said, all the arms trafficking, smuggling, illicit trades, all that, right? Now, the United States, which is the most popular country, they have a score of 5.67. So it's slightly above the global score. Coming in next, the second most popular country for Dominicans is Spain, and they have a score of 5.90. So I'm going to go to Italy, and Italy has a rate of 6.22. Now, before I tell you what the score is of the Dominican Republic, you just heard the scores of the US, Spain, and Italy, that they were above the national score. So my question to you is this: can you believe that the score of the Dominican Republic is lower or higher than that? Well, let me tell you. The score for the Dominican Republic is actually 5.02, making it safer than the US, Spain, and Italy. Now, I'm not blind. I'm not here to say the Dominican Republic is this utopia and is this paradise, because crime does exist here in the Dominican Republic. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But it's also important to acknowledge what type of crime and what is common when visiting the Dominican Republic or living here. Now, the most common types of crime that you're going to see here is pickpocketing, your cell phone being taken. And yes, you do have more serious crimes, but those usually tend to be domestic. You don't usually have to worry about a mass shooting at a mall or a school or anything like that. Most crime that does happen is between 2 individuals who know each other, have a dispute, have an argument, and a fallout, and it goes from there. So now you do hear stories about things happening to people at resorts, to tourists. But when you do your due diligence and you hear about these stories and you dig a little bit deeper and you start to ask yourself, well, how is it that this tourist was robbed inside of a resort? Because any Dominican can tell you that if you're in a resort, you're probably one of the safest areas. You have security access to get in. You're not allowed to be on the premises without a wristband. And they take extreme care of visitors visiting the property. Now, one of the things that the media tends to leave out whenever talking about these situations is information that is extremely important, and it's the following. If you plan on coming to the Dominican Republic for illicit drugs or prostitution, visiting barrios, your likelihood of being involved in some sort of crime or criminal activity, your chances are obviously higher than someone who's visiting the Dominican Republic, visiting a tourist area, or moving to the Dominican Republic, living in a neighborhood, and not being involved with those type of things. Now, the problem is individuals who come to the Dominican Republic seek illegal activities, and they seek these drugs. And of course, they're going to be involved, and they're going to get involved with the wrong individuals. So that's one of the things that I always like to make clear whenever talking about this, because people are like, oh yeah, like, for example, what's going on in Colombia right now with, the situations with these passport bros that are taking over. It's kind of pathetic, but they're going to Colombia, right? And you have guys that are being drugged, you have guys that are being robbed, but they only tell you about the first part. They don't tell you why, or they don't tell you what the situation is. And it's similar here in the Dominican Republic. So if you plan on visiting the Dominican Republic and you don't plan on being involved in any of those illicit activities, you are extremely safe, especially if you're in a touristic area like Punta Cana, Samaná, Casa de Campo, La Zona Colonial, Santo Domingo, Puerto Plata. You are going to be safe. Now, the Dominican government has actually created a specific police task force called POLITUR. Now, what their goal and objective is to make sure and to provide security in these touristic areas. That way the Policía Nacional can have some assistance and make it easier for tourists. If you walk anywhere in the Zona Colonial or you go to Punta Cana, you see you see them in trucks. They usually have polo shirts with blue pants. You can see them if you're ever in Dominican Republic. I'll put the information down below so that if you're here in Dominican Republic and anything ever happens, you can reach out to them. And they are designated only for tourists. So that should even give you even an additional peace of mind that there's actually a task force that focuses on tourists coming to the Dominican Republic, focuses on their safety, focuses on them being safe while being here in the Dominican Republic. Because remember, tourism is a major contributor to the economy here in the Dominican Republic. And the government wants to ensure that tourists that come here feel safe, have a great time, come back and share the great experience with other people. So like I said, crime does exist here. Now, what are some tips that I can give you so that you aren't a victim of crime? Number one, if you are visiting out here, be smart. Don't be carrying large amounts of cash. Don't, call attention to yourself. Don't do things you wouldn't do elsewhere, right? Because if you call attention to yourself, that's on you. Now, I get comments all the time about jewelry, things like that. I personally, as you can tell, I don't wear any jewelry, so I don't really worry about those things. But if you are wearing jewelry, make sure that you are in an area that is, if it's a tourist area, you should be fine because you're gonna have police. Now, if you go out at night and you're wearing jewelry and you go to a barrio at 3 o'clock in the morning, well, you are just calling to get robbed. So be safe, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you know where you're going. If you're on your cell phone, make sure that you're not driving around with your windows down and your cell phone being out the window because a motoconcho could swing by and take it, right? Those are little tips that can help you avoid being a victim of some sort of crime here in the Dominican Republic. Remember, you have to take precaution as you would anywhere in the world, okay? Because things do happen here. This is not a safe haven. This is not some place where crime doesn't exist, because unfortunately it does. But as far as reducing the chances, greatly. One of the things that I do want to talk about are some of these fear-mongering comments that I get in my posts on Instagram and TikTok that try to instill fear in other people. And so we're going to dive into some of these comments. And I'm going to respond to you as to why I think these comments are ridiculous. So the first comment we have here says, don't trust the people who tell you that walking with your phone and jewelry in DR is safe, because it's not. It doesn't matter which part you're in. Now, you see, this is a comment that, kind of crack up. First of all, anywhere you go in the world that you have jewelry on, you need to be careful. Anywhere in the world that you have your cell phone on, you need to be careful. But this person over here just wants to make it seem like this only happens here in the Dominican Republic. This is something that happens everywhere, which is why I said, if you're out with jewelry, large amounts of cash at 3 o'clock in the morning, your likelihood of becoming a victim has dramatically increased. Whereas if you're somebody who's coming to the Dominican Republic, you're in your hotel room by 10 o'clock at night, you're not wearing jewelry, you're not flashing cash, you're probably not going to be a victim. This another comment. Guys, be careful. Do not let anyone deceive you. Most areas in DR are not safe. Do not walk around with your phone out or with a lot of jewelry on you. Always pretend to have less than you have. People do get unalived every day over phones and dumb stuff. It's cool to be optimistic, but don't ignore what actual Dominicans are telling you. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna do a little bit of research. I'm going to try to see how many people were murdered here in Dominican Republic last week from cell phones. I'll put it here in the stats, because according to this person, someone dies from being robbed on a cell phone every single day. And since I've lived here, I have heard people being robbed, but most of those people live to tell their stories. That's one of the things that I always tell people. They'll read comments, oh, I got robbed. Well, guess what? You are fortunate enough to live. People here can comment about getting robbed. And it's one of those things that, like, for me, I'm not saying it's perfect, but at the end of the day, when you hear these stories, those individuals are fortunate enough to be alive. And I always say it, a life is worth more than this phone would ever be worth. So always take that into consideration. All right, so this is a comment right here. In the US, they kill randomly for fun, like pushing others to the train tracks, run, or attack people in the streets with a hammer, knives, etc. There are even apps where you can track criminals or ex-convicts near you. And when you look at the map, it's flooded because it's everywhere. Furthermore, their cultural behavior and how they treat others in public spaces. They're always ready for a heated argument and a fight. You won't see any adults making embarrassing tantrums at Starbucks or chairs being thrown at McDonald's employees over a missing nugget or ketchup sauce. But their ego is so high. When they ignore their flaws and are incapable to accept that a country like DR is actually much safer than theirs. And that's something right there. This is a comment that is well written, it's factual, and when people come to DR, they think that people are yelling. Dominicans talk loud. Okay, Dominicans talk loud. You can go into a room with 3 or 4 Dominicans and it sounds like a stadium of 100,000 people. But here, you still have that respect. Here, you still have morals and values. Here, there's still respect for older people. As a matter of fact, the other day when I was walking, an elderly lady grabbed my hand with Santiago. She got out of the car. She didn't even ask me. She grabbed my arm and I walked her across the street, right? We still have those type of respect. Privilege is something that I do not miss about the US. Entitlement is something I don't miss about living in the US, right? And this isn't about that. This is about acknowledging that some of this anger and some of this rage comes from privilege, like this comment just said. You see employees being treated poorly because their order was messed up. And at the end of the day, we're humans. We are going to make mistakes. Now, those were the fear-mongering comments. Now let's take a look and let's look at comments of those people who have migrated to the Dominican Republic and have shared their experience with us. The first one says, I lived in Sosua through pandemia and people were just amazing. I walked alone at night and mornings and nothing but greetings. I take local bus to Santiago into the capital. What a treat. Common sense mixed with learning about and acceptance of local culture makes a big difference. So many lies and information about this country. Violence is everywhere, but way more in USA than DR. So there you have it. Like, that's somebody who moved out here. It looks like they moved from the US. They were here during the pandemic. They were here. It looks like they walked alone at night and they were safe. Here's another comment. Moved from Miami 1 year ago and it's been the best decision. Keep speaking facts. It's a scary time for the US. It's only going to get worse. And I'm absolutely terrified of what's to come. Everyone's moving abroad. I'm next. So here's a comment. It was being a little bit, he was exaggerating. So this comment is about a post I made on Instagram where tourists were walking around with a cell phone. He said, so dangerous, laugh face, laugh face, laugh face. Meanwhile, I'm in Chicago with 75 people this weekend, in 1 week. 75. When was the last time 75 people were shot here in Santo Domingo in 1 week? En fin de semana. ¿Cuándo fue la última vez? Come on, man. Capotillo is bad, man. 75 nunca. Really?
Aquí yo creo que, o sea, tal vez yo diría que un par de maten 1 o 2, pero qué sé yo, una vez por semana, 2 veces por semana.
But see, he just said it right there. He just validated my point. Then he went, right? Once again, if you're involved in that activity, you're involved in illicit trade, right? Whereas unfortunately in the States, I could be doing my grocery shopping and someone could just wake up in a bad mood and just blast the store. There's a difference. I'm doing my grocery shopping, whereas somebody who's doing illicit trade, of course they're gonna get it. But why should I be harmed when I'm doing shopping? Why should my kids be harmed when they're in school? Why should I be harmed when I'm sitting there praying to God in a church like what happened in Texas? Now, this is not to criticize. Let's be clear. I've said it plenty of times, and I'm going to say it again so that those on this video don't think that I'm trying to belittle or bash the United States. I have a lot of appreciation for the United States. It's where I was born, it's where I was raised, it's where I met my wife, It's where my daughters were born. It's where I started my businesses. However, we can't be blind to the fact that it's not what it used to be. We can't be blind to the fact that gun violence is a serious problem that's going on in the United States. So next time you ask somebody about, oh, is Mexico or the Dominican Republic or Colombia safe? Stop and ask yourself for a second, how safe is it where I am? How safe is it where I live? And then you can criticize others. Dominican Republic will never be a perfect place. There will never be a day where there's no cell phone robs or crime doesn't exist, because unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. So make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell for more content like this, life in Dominican Republic, or if you simply just want to learn what life is like on the island. Till next time.